Hello, welcome to the Monday, December 12th, 2016 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Washington, D.C. If you're interested in malware analysis, you probably realize that there's an ongoing game of countermeasures and countermeasures between malware analysts and malware authors. DDA has a nice example of one of those tricks. Now, malware, when you analyze it, one of the simple ways to analyze malware is just to run it for a while. Malware authors, of course, realize that and they will just delay any actions for a while in order to escape detections, because the analyst, for example, would like to figure out what are additional components the malware downloads. Well, if the malware waits long enough, then the malware analyst may miss those additional downloads. Then, of course, the analysts started to accelerate the system clock on the system they're using to analyze the malware. Well, the next step, and that's something DDA is talking about, and he has seen that now even in some of these Visual Basic script samples that he was analyzing. The malware will just look for an external time reference like an NDP server, try to connect to it, and then try to figure out how much time expired in real life compared to the system time. That way it will be able to, first of all, detect a large skew in system time, but it will also then just detect what the real time elapsed is, and based on that, again, delay execution. Of course, you can still statically analyze the malware, but that tends to be more labor-intensive and time-consuming than just running it. If you do run the malware, then you would have to set up a special skewed time server, which can be a little bit tricky to configure, and I'm not aware of sort of any out-of-the-box way of doing that. But if you do have any, let me know. If you're running SAP as an enterprise resource planning system, then you may also be running ACE, which is a software that was released by PricewaterhouseCoopers in order to protect SAP. Now, ACE is essentially sort of an add-on to SAP. It's written in ABAP, the SAP programming language, and according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, doesn't really introduce any sort of backdoors or such, which apparently is wrong according to a vulnerability disclosure was released by ESNC. ESNC discovered that ACE actually does introduce an arbitrary code execution vulnerability that would allow an attacker to insert their own ABAP code into your SAP instance. This is executable remotely without authentication if you do have the report or a web GUI interface exposed. So first step, turn that off if you can, and then review your ACE install and maybe even disable it until there is a fix available. Currently, PricewaterhouseCoopers hasn't really responded with a fix. Instead, they really just send cease and desist letters to the company that disclosed these vulnerabilities to them. At this point, there is no public exploit available for this vulnerability, but of course, given that it's now known that there is a vulnerability, others may be looking for the additional details to create such an exploit. And talking about exploits that you can't patch, Netgear has two routers currently, R7000 and R6400. Both routers suffer from a trivial to exploit vulnerability. There is no patch available right now. To exploit the vulnerability, literally all you have to do is just append the command to the CGI-bin directory in the URL. Even if you restrict remote access to the web config, you may still be vulnerable actually, because this vulnerability could simply be exploited via cross-site request forging or other ways that would bounce this attack off your browser inside your network. Probably the best thing you can do is try to return that router to where you bought it. Maybe that'll put some pressure onto companies like Netgear to fix these vulnerabilities. The CertCC advisory also has an interesting kind of workaround here. What they're suggesting is you're just using that vulnerability in order to shut down the web server on the router. The router will still be functional, will still be able to route packets and everything. You just won't be able to make any adjustments to the configuration until you reboot the router. Of course, once you reboot the router, you're vulnerable again. And if after taking care of all of those vulnerabilities, you still have some time left, there is a hack challenge by ETSCODIS that was released as usual. Lots of fun that you can have with these challenges. Also tries to always be somewhat educational, and there are some great prizes. So take a look at it. The URL is in the show notes. And with that, thanks for listening, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.